Why, hello YouTube! Greetings from the Lazy Eyebrow to the third Diet December review. This is the review for Kingdom Airazor, another one of those updated Beast Wars characters that Kingdom was fraught with that featured all that excellent sculpt work. And holy taquito, this one is no exception! Airazor has been modeled after a peregrine falcon, and like the other Beast Wars Kingdom figures, for better or for worse, the beast mode has been altered to more closely resemble the real-world counterpart. In this case, though, I'd say for the better, because the detail seen on this figure is a whole nother level. Like, you look at it from the front, detail. The side, detail. The back, detail. Like, all things considered, the whole shape of the body isn't entirely accurate to the Falcon, as it's a little huskier than it should be, but it's also not ridiculously disproportionate, and that's kind of okay. Like, the figure more than makes up for that with how well the thing can move, and how beautifully sculpted it all is. Like, look at that head. Look at the way the feet situate themselves. It's all really well designed, and we've barely gotten into it. Like, you open up the wings, and man, this is where Airazor shines. She has a full-on wingspan that just morphs from a really compact profile that just looks incredible. They absolutely nailed the profile of a falcon on a full wingspan, and not just from a top-down perspective, but from a head-on one as well. Discounting the hinge joints for a sec, they also designed the wingtips to sit in a natural upwards arc, making them look super natural. And a close-up view gives us all the look at an intense sculpt work that went into these wings. Like, we have such a masterfully crafted look at her primary flight feathers, secondary flight feathers, the minor and major coverts, all the way up to the antibrachial coverts. And not even just that, but like, you zoom in on these primary feathers for a second, and you get all this extra detail work someone put in to make these subtle lines to represent veins in the feather. And even that's not all, for if you flip the bird over, you'll see they did all this work not just at the top, but made sure the underside of the bird was just as well looked after. And to add to that, they even added some airbrushed white to the wingtips for extra realism. And like, has there ever been something this beautifully sculpted in all of Transformers? This is beautiful. This is just so magnificently stunning, so majestic, and no matter how often I look at this, I always marvel at the fact that we were given this gift at a deluxe price point. That's not the only word that's rocking on this bird, however. On the underside, we get a better look at the way the legs have been designed, and man, oh man, are they ever fantastic too. They're built to adjust the shins for robot mode, but they look like the proper bird thighs you'd see on a falcon, with a second joint added for the backwards bend you'd see on a bird, topped off with the 3 talons you'd see on the end of a falcon's foot. Just all in all, if you're looking at this figure from the perspective of just aesthetics, it's already a sight to behold, and I'm not even done talking about the bird yet. Slight detour before we do that, though, there are accessories. These are these little missile things I'll talk more about later, but I just wanted to point out that there is indeed storage for this mode, and it's right here. It's kind of lame. So let's talk about something else that's downright jaw-dropping. Articulation. So on the head, there's decent amount of range. It can look up and down and full spin. The tail can move up and down, mainly for transformation, but you can make it work for your animations if you need it to. Legs at the hips have an intense range of forward and backward movement. The second backwards ankle joint moves a little bit, and the feet are ball jointed. As for my favorite part though, the wings are fully segmented. One hinge right at the base. Second, there's a double hinge for a full bend in half, or however else you want it to move. And lastly, a third hinge for its up and down movement, wrapped up by the wing tips that swivel for the full wingspan. Like, the level of movement you can achieve with these wings is insane. Aside from like a multi-ball jointed tail assembly or something, I don't think I've ever seen this many joints in one appendage before, and as such it leaves you with a wing that can totally flap in a semi-realistic fashion. It's not 100% perfect, but it is 100% impressive, especially when you again consider how much you just paid for this. This is insane. Like, whenever I buy a figure that also becomes a bird, I'm used to seeing something like this. You get a flap right at the base and a second bit in the middle for an extra flap if you're lucky. Like Skylink's being commander price, I was moderately impressed with what the wings did, and then you get Airazor and it's like, sorry, the bar has just been set way higher for Transformers with wings. I cannot stress enough how impressed I am with just these wings alone, both in sculpted detail and range of movement. Anyway, let's look into some size comparisons. Here she is with her fellow Maximals and all their out-of-scale beast modes, unless you're referring to just specifically their on-screen scale, in which case she's pretty good. Not counting Rhinox, though. Though that scale thing is even worse when you look at Predacons. Like, aren't these supposed to be insects and arachnids? I digress. On-screen accuracy is pretty good, too. Anyway, long story short, Airazor is probably the best Kingdom Beast Wars Deluxe figure that even probably gives the Voyager figures a run for their money. Strictly speaking on design and articulation alone. You get so much for the Deluxe price with a figure that looks absolutely incredible and moves like there's no tomorrow. The only regret I have, honestly, is not reviewing this figure sooner. I mean, what a toy! Anyway, we're about to head into robot mode, so stay tuned.
The Transformers will return after these messages. We now return to the Transformers.
So to transform Airazor, start by unpegging the tail. Next, take the legs off their pegs at the back of the bird and open them up a little. Straighten out the shins, straighten out the knees, rotate the feet, pull the legs down, rotate the shins, and then rotate the hips. Point the shoulder pads up, then pull out the arms. At this point, if you want to say power is everything and stop there, you're absolutely well within your right. Otherwise, let's keep going. Untab the back of the bird, rotate the whole upper section around halfway on these little orangish hinges here, rotate the bird head assembly down while pushing the robot head up at the back. After that, the bird head is going to clip into this tab on the lower abs here. Finally, the wings. Start by folding over the double hinge section like so, which will reveal where a tab is molded into the design. Fold down the third hinge so the wings point forward, and then rotate all of it back so those tabs slot into the back, then rotate the wing tips down. And we have ourselves an Airazor. And man, what a figure that just sprang out of a bird. And finally, a fembot that actually makes sense to be slender and petite framed based on her alt mode instead of trying to force this aesthetic out of a big bulky car. It not only looks great, but it also appears to be incredibly accurate to the source material's transformation too. Like man, this bird just has it all. Like you get more of that feather detail that's been applied to the head sculpt, making it look excellent with that metallic purple of the face that complements the piercing green eyes set against the black. All that sculpted feather detail makes its way to the shoulder pads as well, with the head sitting in amongst all the orange detail that just pops. The legs are properly slender and athletic looking, and the feet that are wholly accurate to their source material. Which brings us back to the wings. I really do love how all the folding up they've done has left them being significantly compacted to the point that it just tucks away unintrusively as a little birdie backpack. Like, considering the immense span that these have otherwise, I think this is about as small as they'll get, and it just works out for Airazor. As for accessories, Airazor gets her gold color missiles as seen in the show. These are on 5mm pegs and pop into ports as seen in her forearms for the iconic arm-mounted missile launcher look, and I think they look pretty good. Lightweight, but potent enough to take down Predacons. As for articulation, the head is ball-jointed for full circular motion and looking up. Shoulder pads on their own hinge, with arms that rotate 360, if not for kibble collisions. Outward all the way, bicep swivel, and about 110 degrees of elbow bend. Unfortunately, there's no wrist rotation. That's not really a complaint so much as it is a remark, though, as with everything else it does, especially in the wings, I will happily skip the wrist swivel if not possible. What does swivel, however, despite the head being locked in nearby, is the waist. Like, it has all that movement and transformation going on up there, and they still took time to work this in. Crash plate moves up to increase the range of these absolutely insane hips. Like, look how far they go up. That's crazy. The thighs swivel, the knee bends 150 degrees, the shins bend in half if you want to make it look like she broke her leg, and the feet are ball jointed for all kinds of tilt and swivel. All of this and the wing articulation is still fully accessible, making for things like a superhero landing pose, a Black Widow landing pose, a generic stance, using the wings like a shield, or even just waiting for someone to pick up the screw attack. Like, man, she is just so versatile. For size comparison, here she is with fellow robot Maximals, non-fellow robot Predacons, and for the heck of it, here she is with other fembots that all try and be cars in their spare time. So that was Airazor. In a word, she's incredible. In several words, I cannot believe how much time was spent designing this figure. Strictly speaking, on the physical frame of the figure, it's really well done. Hits all sort of dynamic posable range and absolutely nails the source material. A comment could be made about slight concern about this figure holding up over time, as some of the joints do appear to be a little bit fiddly and thin, and we'll see how that goes over time. I haven't really heard any reports of anyone's breaking, but the fact that they're all these thin does concern me a little bit. Going beyond all that, though, the aesthetics are an absolute dream. Again, I gotta highlight that feather detail, simply if no more reason than to just wrap my own head around it, because I'm still trying to do that. Just, wow, this figure is something else. This has been the Lazy Eyebrow.